This is Joe Dombrowski here for WrestleZone Daily Radio. It's just moments after the Royal Rumble at the time I say this, and I'm joined by a very eclectic personality in the wrestling business. He's a little shy sometimes, but we got him out of a shell. He's been a color analyst to my play-by-play commentary. He's been an in-ring performer that I've had the pleasure of watching and calling his matches, and by God, there's a chance he's going to be my future boss. How scary that could be. Franchise Shane Douglas, welcome to WrestleZone Radio.
It's great to be here.
We just concluded being part of the WrestleRumble.com viewing party here in Elwood City, Pennsylvania. And, I have to ask, as opinionated as you are, this is still simmering, it's still resonating in your head right now, but give us an overall view of what your thoughts were on the Royal Rumble this year.
Well, after you told me what happened, after you woke me up, seriously, I watched this and I try to make heads or tails of the psychology of what's going on and who wrote this stuff, and no psychology to it whatsoever. You don't bring an AJ Styles out on his debut and put him out there. You can see the reaction from the fans. You know, you set your booking to set everybody up for success, not for imminent failure. To put Roman Reigns in the number one position, apparently to build him, and then you give him a 30-minute break. The fans are obviously wise enough to know what that meant. And so when he comes back, you put him at a disadvantage with the audience because they know that this guy just got a 30-minute break during what do they call that group, the League of Nations or whatever, attacking him on the ringside and right in front of the referees. I mean, are there no rules? Is there no structure? Because if there's not, I'll just bring a gun down with me to the next year's Royal Rumble and shoot everybody and win the Royal Rumble as soon as the bell rings. Obviously there's no rules, because if I can stand there and 5, 6, 7 guys beat up on Roman Reigns right in front of the referees at ringside, then, they're just nothing. And then he comes back in and they set it down to the last 3 guys. Clearly the audience not buying Roman after that break, as every time he would do something, the fans would boo. He's the babyface. Every time a heel, a well-ensconced heel like Hunter would do something against him, they would cheer. And then they knock him out of the ring, number 3 from last, leaving it Dean Ambrose and Hunter. Like you said, why would you leave Dean Ambrose to the last line of defense? And if you want to build towards Hunter versus Roman at WrestleMania, the way to do that would have been to have it come down to those last 2 and have some kind of a screw job finish at that point. But none of that made any sense to me. And again, Dolph Ziggler used as just the guy to throw around in there and just to bring some excitement and just, the mustard on the side of the plate. Nothing, never the entree. And clearly the guy has the skills to be that. So I'm sitting here with a great big question mark in my head as to who in the hell booked that garbage.
Was there a way to sort of rectify this? What do you think of the fact that both AJ Styles, Brock Lesnar, arguably the 2 biggest fan favorites in the match, did not factor in anywhere near toward the end of the match? Could doing that have salvaged things, or would that still have put Roman Reigns in a no-win situation?
Well, I think in a no-win situation, if AJ hasn't debuted yet, which he hadn't, debut him somewhere else. Don't debut in a match where he's going to put somebody else at a disadvantage and put yourself as a company back in the Daniel Bryan situation from a few years ago, that when you throw AJ out, as they did tonight, the crowd erupts in boos. Now, look, I don't believe that you give the crowd what they demand or what they ask for. You have to be in control of the booking. But the booking from a psychology standpoint was so flawed in the way that they had the entrances and the way that they gave Roman the 30-minute break and the way that they had AJ out there. Another thing, it's phenomenal to see an old friend like Chris Jericho last 48, 49 minutes. My question is why? He's not even a full-time performer on the card. You bring him in there and does a great job, I guess, apparently thinking that he's going to be the glue to hold the whole thing together. But if you need to rely on somebody who's a part-timer for your company to be the glue holding a Royal Rumble together, that's flawed in its thinking. So I'm here scratching my head, and I'm looking for something good to say about it, because I don't want to always come off the guy who just rips on WWE for no reason, but I really can't from my standpoint right now. But again, I'll say up front, I have no idea of the booking that went in leading up to it, because I don't watch their show, sporadically here and there. So maybe there was something in the booking leading up to that might have made more semblance of sense on the way it was booked, the way the entrances were, the way the exits were set up. But to me, from watching from my point of view, I remember Vince McMahon telling me one time, we want the fans every episode to be standalone. So if you haven't watched in months, you'll know exactly what happens because of this episode. Well, I haven't watched it in a little bit longer than months, and I have no idea why they booked it the way they did. It made no sense.
We, coincidentally enough, watched the Royal Rumble together last year, and we saw the storm of negativity that came from fans. And we saw a little bit of a smattering of that when AJ Styles was eliminated, although Sami Zayn, Brock Lesnar kind of swayed the fans back into the match. Do you think, I'm not going to ask you for a letter grade because I don't want to give you bad memories, but I mean, do you think this Rumble made the same mistakes on the same par of maybe last year or the year before? Was there a little more focus? They have somewhere to go with now with Triple H, and maybe Dean Ambrose is kind of an X factor between Hunter and Roman, or was this just another year of abject failure of reading their audience?
I just don't think they're reading the audience right, and it's hard for the audience to get a grip on it because, when you're doing things, I mean, on paper, you can look and say AJ Styles in that spot is going to get a huge reaction when he goes out. Their thinking on it, I guess, is, well, AJ Styles on his debut lasts, 28 minutes or whatever it was, and that's fantastic for your first time in WWE. Okay, that as a snapshot, there may be some inkling too. But putting him in there at the same time that you're obviously, if you put Roman Reigns in the number one position and you have him last to the very end, sans if you take out the 30-minute break to the side, clearly their objective was to get Roman over in some sense on that. I think they failed miserably at that in getting him over. Why would you have him go out 3 from last when it's Ambrose and 2 heels left in there? I'm sitting there scratching my head, and I've got to ask, who's doing it? The other part of it is on the performance side. If we got into a big bar fight and everything, when the music would hit, nobody in that bar would stop swinging bottles and fisticuffs and go, okay, who's coming in the door now? And almost every single time there was an entrance, all the actions completely stopped in the ring as everybody stopped and looked. And the other part of it is, you have the guys, throwing people out casually at will, people flying around like fly paper or like flies, being flown around a bush someplace. And yet when a guy like Ryback, who is clearly cock strong, picks somebody up and get him close to that top rope, and all of a sudden, like a force field, he can't get him any further. It was all over the place, and I don't know why they can't. They got Double A there, Arn Anderson. They got access to Steamboat and Dean Malenko. Clearly, guys that know what's up and what's down. And I don't see any kind of input or any kind of flavor from those guys who are great psychologists and are great technicians in the ring. And then you see the product get in the ring, and all you see is just, let's just go out there and vomit moves up that make no sense or in order, in any order or any kind of psychological reasoning. I come away from this every time I watch their product just scratching my head.
Now, you kind of just answered this question, but you've been in Royal Rumble matches in the past, most notably 1991, where you had a good run in that matchup. Talk about the difference very quickly between the Royal Rumble matches of that day versus what you see today.
Well, today it's like last year's especially, and this year's we saw a big flavor of the same thing from last year where you'd have 2 guys get in the ring and something happened, then one guy would be out, and then one guy standing in the ring waiting for somebody else to come. I made the joke last year, if you remember, funny thing happened to win a Royal Rumble, and the Battle Royal actually broke out. Tonight we saw a lot of that, although there was a lot more tilt towards Battle Royal at certain points of the match. Back then, the guys were so well seasoned. Guys like Mr. Perfect and Rick Rude and just get Jake the Snake Roberts. Go down the list of all these phenomenal performers. They knew that you can't just fly around and do a bunch of moves when there's all these bodies in there. And so they would have very selected points where they would set these spots up that were very well timed and very well placed and made total sense. and the action would continue, and the fights would continue, and the Rumble would continue as somebody made an entrance. The most notable in my head that night being when Butch came walking down the bushwhacker with his arms going and gets in the ring, gets thrown right out the other side, and walks right back out the same way. But the point was, as he was doing that entrance, the action in the ring, the Rumble, was continuing. Nobody was stopping to say, hey, let's everybody look at Butch come down here, and then when he gets here, we'll throw him out and then get right back to fighting.
Unlike, say, tonight with the R-Truth comedy attempt with the ladder. Yeah,
you come down there, my thought was, again, going back to like the old Bill Watts, think, shoot, but work. If I was in a fight, with 30 other guys or however many that had ever amassed to it, whatever one point, and I saw a guy coming down and taking all this time to reach under the ring and get a ladder and slide it in there and comes in and trying to set it up, I would kick his teeth down out of his face the second he put his head under that bottom rope. I don't know. It just, I understand the psychology, or not the psychology, but the thinking of this is sports entertainment. It ain't wrestling. You're wrong, Vince. It is. It's in a ring, and the guy, every fan that was here tonight kept saying, I can't wait to see this wrestling show tonight. It's going to be a great wrestling pay-per-view. Not one person came up to me tonight and said, I can't wait to see this sports entertainment tonight.
Well, you're looking to bring back a lot of the wrestling into professional wrestling. Let's talk a little bit about CWR. We've heard some rumblings. They've gotten a little louder the past few months. What can you tell us about the vision of the franchise moving forward and potentially big things ahead?
Well, all I can tell you is you got to keep on keeping on. Things continue to fester, and we've gotten much closer, but there was huge news this past week, and we'll be making announcements on what that huge news is very soon. All I can say, if I were still a dean, we'll say, and was making a prognostication on the future, I would say that the future for professional wrestling, not sports entertainment, looks very, very bright.
Do we want to talk about one of the terms that CWR has kind of coined, reality sports, and why does that differ from sports entertainment?
Yeah, well, sports entertainment is, I think the fans know pretty well, or the 2 million or so that they have left watching out of the 52 million that used to watch. Reality sports is our answer to sports entertainment. It's getting wrestling back to the sports side of it, to the athletic side of it, to the competitive side of it, and nature of it, as opposed to watch Shane Douglas come down to the ring and get this, while this big old fight's going on, get this ladder out and climb up and look for something that's not there. I love Truth. He's a great guy. He's an incredible performer. If that's the best that their writing staff can come up with for a guy like R-Truth, give me R-Truth's contract, and I'll take reality sports and use R-Truth in reality sports and demonstrate his skills to the world with reality sports. And I have no doubt in my mind that R-Truth could draw one hell of a lot more money being allowed to let loose that way athletically than under sports entertainment.
And let's clarify with reality sports, we're not talking about, sitting in a headlock for 20 minutes. No. We're not talking about being out of touch with the audience, because there's going to be a lot of ECW just as much as there is old school territory in this thought, isn't there?
Yeah, well, we're not going to try to redo ECW either. It was lightning in a bottle, and I think it would be paying a disservice to ECW. But there will be at times a lot of flavor of ECW. There will be times a lot of flavor of old school wrestling. There will be times that you'll feel like you're watching UFC. There is, it would take forever. I know exactly what we have planned as far as product look and feel. All I can say is the wrestling fans that are out there that have lost hope that wrestling is coming back can once again garnish that hope that wrestling is coming back, not maybe, is coming back.
One of the most vocal supporters of this project has been Jake the Snake Roberts.
Yeah.
For some of those newer fans that maybe weren't around for his heyday or maybe only know him from his journey with Dallas Page, tell us what the mind of Jake Roberts being involved says to what CWR is doing.
Pure and simple, Jake Roberts is the greatest psychology in the history of our business. Jake could get a crowd to cry. He could get a crowd to boo. He could get a crowd to throw things. He could get a crowd to sit down and shut up. Jake is a maestro when it comes to an audience. Jake's been off on his tangent and he's well documented battle with drugs. So proud and happy as his friend to say that he is clean and sober. He's looking better and better every day. He just had his hip operated on after years of doing the DDT. Clearly, not so much sports entertainment because he had to have surgery to replace his hip. But you can see it in his face. The fire is back in Jake. It's lit back in his belly. And we've got 20 years of Jake on hiatus because of the drugs, suddenly back, suddenly clear-headed, suddenly a fire lit in his belly. And I, for one, as a mark of this great sport, am damn excited to see what Jake Roberts has to offer for CWR and wrestling and the fans.
Great to see a legend like Jake back on his feet. Also want to give a shout out before we wrap this to another great legend that's with us here tonight, Dominic Denucci, your trainer. Yes. Great to see Dominic up and at him and still as sharp as ever.
Dominic just had a birthday yesterday, 84 years old, and still cuts trees down and drags trees around his farm during the summer. For a man of that age, there's a well-documented picture everybody saw recently. If you hadn't, go look for it. Bruno Sammartino without a shirt on looks incredible. And Dominic, Dominic's quite frankly, he's like a second father to me. The nicest guy I've ever met in wrestling. Honest and sincere. Was one hell of a worker, knew his craft, and I'm so thankful to have had the opportunity to learn from him and to bring what Dominic taught me and people like Mick, and to be able to put our tilt on it and have some success with that. But yeah, it's always great for me to get Dominic out and to come places like this because Dominic doesn't get a chance to see wrestling fans as often as he would like to. But as you can see tonight, Dominic really enjoyed being around the fans, and it was so phenomenal when I announced him and the whole room erupted in applause and vast, a lot of kids that had no idea who probably he or I were, but everybody else that was in that room was over 25, 30 years old, damn well knew who Dominic Denucci was and gave him his proper respect. So it was cool as hell for me to see.
Dominic, a major WWF star back in the day, trainer of yourself, Mick Foley. He was telling me some Jim Barnett stories earlier. That's always a good time.
I'm sure he's got a few. 5-time world tag team champion. Dominic was very good at his craft. If Dominic had been as good on promos, obviously English is second language for him, but if he had been as good on promos as he was a technician in the ring, he would have been another Bruno Sammartino type character. As it was, he didn't have that because English was a second language to him, unlike Bruno, who came over as a child and learned English and basically grew up with it. Dominic, it was clearly a second language, actually a third language, because he'd gone from Italy to Montreal where he spoke French, then to here. So I always make fun of Dominic and saying, you've been here longer than I've been alive and you still can't speak a lick of English, but love him to death and respect the world out of him.
Franchise, 30-plus year career. You've always been controversial, but I have a feeling that we really haven't even begun to hear you make noise yet. Any final words leading into 2016 for what people can expect from either CWR or the franchise in general?
The one thing about the franchise is, and it's not something I ever planned on or like some tact I came into the business with saying I'm going to do this. Controversies always seem to find me, and it always seemed to suit me well. This time it's going to be a lot more fun for me. If I could wave a magic wand and be 20 years old again, I'd love to be 20 years old again and have a second run at it. Maybe not make some of the same mistakes and maybe have fun making a lot of the same mistakes. But the one thing's for sure is with the 30 plus years in this business, I've taken the time to learn my craft. I wasn't the guy that was sitting there worried about the pretty girl in the third row or where the party was after the show tonight. I was watching how the cameramen were shooting, why the director was cutting to those particular shots. Why was the booker, whether it was Dusty or Bill Watts or Paul Heyman, why were they booking it the way they were booking it? And really, I still challenge myself and learn stuff every day about my craft and about my sport. To me, and anybody that knows me knows that I've never been a sports entertainment fan. I've always been a professional wrestling fan. And I think that the wrestling business, the sport of professional wrestling, like I said in the promo after the belt throwdown years ago, the sport of professional wrestling needed a kick in the ass then. It needs resurrected again, and I think there's a lot of fans, millions of fans out there that are ready to see it. And I, for one, would be thrilled to death to be the one to be helping to bring it and being helping to guide the next generation of franchises and Dominic Denucci's and Bruno Sammartino's and Mick Foley's, because they're out there. It's just going to take somebody like a great mind like Jake Roberts' psychologically, or Kevin Sullivan's storytelling and idea guy, and on and on and on. It's going to be a great, great year for professional wrestling, and a lot of hard work into laying the foundation for this thing, and we're really looking forward to blowing the lid off of it.
There you have it, franchise. Thank you for joining us. CWR, going to make sure old school meets new age. Tradition going to meet tomorrow. Stay tuned here to WrestleZone.com, WrestleZone Daily. This is Joe Dombrowski reporting.
Now remember, my bags get carried, and I'm going to be your boss, so it's...
Oh.
Just ribbon. Good seeing you, Joe.